how we can make the link between the two. And the example I'm going to use is the posterior shoulder. It's kind of notorious for getting gammed down and sticky, particularly the posterior capsule, posterior rotator cuff, the posterior strictures. And one of the most common stretches you'll see for attending to that is this one, pulling the shoulder girdle right through and around. Now I'd argue that that is a semi-integrated stretch, but it's certainly not an isolated stretch. Now in terms of integration, we've got to remember that the posterior cuff, the posterior strictures are only really part of an integrated body. And in particular, they are part of the posterior oblique chain. That's the chain of muscles and fascia and structure that runs through the left calf, the left hamstrings, up through the left glute, into the thoracolumbar fascia, into the lats, into those posterior structures, posterior deltoid, triceps, forearm extensors, fingers. Part of that chain. So, if we are going to isolate in terms of muscle stretching, we would only do that if we are then going to integrate, because that is normal function. So our isolated choice in this case would be to make sure we hit the right part, and we're going to use this technique. Instead of protracting the shoulder right around, we are going to pin the shoulder back. Pin it back, voluntary action, pin it back, and then get the shaft of the humerus and pull it across your body. Now I can feel it. Definitely isolated to the posterior structures. Much, much tougher stretch. Okay, if you're struggling with that, just use a wall. So I can learn to pin my shoulder back against the wall and then get my humerus to come across my body. Trying to keep my shoulder pinned back, definitely, that's better technique. Can really feel the isolation. But remember, I'm only going to isolate if I am then going to integrate. So straight away, from that movement pattern, I'm going to go into an integrated chain stretch. My left foot is forward, so that the calf hamstrings get in a relatively lengthened position. Then I cross my body over. Now I'm going for that full integration. Drawing my elbow across, so I'm feeding my isolated stretch into an integrated stretch. Here's another example of how you can do that. I'll show you on my left shoulder this time, just for the camera. I've got a strong band, one of these woody bands, and I'm going to show you how you can use that to pin your shoulder back. There it is. Now in that position, hopefully you can see, it can pin my shoulder back. It's creating the fixation for me. So now I can just draw the humerus across my body. Oh yeah, getting a much more isolated stretch. Try not to protract too much, using the power of the band, and this is a strong one, to pin my shoulder back. There it is. And go for that isolation. And now I'm just going to go back to my right arm just to show you. I've isolated. So now I need to integrate, and I can use the power of the band to help me integrate that stretch. I'm going to go up the band here a little bit. Left foot is forward. I'm creating that lovely oblique posterior chain integrated stretch. Isolation to integration. So hopefully that's just showing you with a couple of practical examples with one regional structure how you can get from an isolated stretch quickly into an integrated stretch and help to normalise function.